The story of Lot is found in Genesis chapter 11 to 14 and chapter 19. Abraham personally took Lot, whose father was late as he was leaving his father's house following God's instruction. He must have been very dear to Abraham, his uncle. Over the years, he will become rich, having a flourishing business and servants like his uncle. But that was going to change in few years to come. A mismanaged crisis and a consequent wrong choice will wreck him, and his name will not be found in God's purpose. According to the Bible, Lot was born to Haran, who died in Ur of the Chaldees. Terah, Lot's grandfather, took Abram, later called Abraham, Lot, and Sarai, later called Sarah, to go into Canaan. They settled at the site called Haran, where Terah died. As a part of the covenant of the pieces, God told Abram to leave his country and his kindred. Abram's nephew Lot followed him on his journey, and they went into the land of Canaan, settling in the hills of Bethel. The name Lot means veil or covering. Within every veil is always something precious hidden from public view and unauthorized access. That was Lot. He had great potentials. Within few years of following Abraham, he became established. And as far as he remained veiled under Abraham's discipleship, he will be safe and prosperous. His safety and prosperity was tied to his relationship with Abraham. And even that will change. The loaf and destiny of this great man was going to happen, and it all started with their herdsmen. When Abram and Lot returned to the hills of Bethel with their many livestock, their respective herdsmen began to bicker. There was competition. Lot's wife, being so possessive, must have played a significant role in the decision that later took. Their animal have multiplied. That competition began secretly. The height of it was the day when that a serious dispute between Abraham's herdsmen and that of Lot. Lot was mute. He made no effort to apologize to his uncle and try to caution his servant. Abraham, sensing the danger that lies ahead, called Lot and kindly spoke to him for a lasting solution. In Genesis 13 verse 8 and 9, Abraham said to Lot, "Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left." Abraham's suggestion was a test for Lot, a test of his submission, a test. Unfortunately, Lot failed that test. He went ahead of his master. He was supposed to follow after Abraham had chosen. He was actually nursing grudges against his master. He was in bitterness and strife against his uncle, who had shown so much love to him and will even later risk his life to rescue him from the hands of raiders. The veil was about to be broken, and Lot was going to leave the veiled position that has shielded and prospered him. It was not just attraction of Sodom alone, but a quest for freedom. He was tired of staying under the supervision and authority of his father and master, Abraham. Lot did not check his desire. He was selfish, and this not consider his uncle, and ultimately God. He chose for himself. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. And Lot journeyed east. Lot left. Like Lot, like Eve, who beheld and fixed her eyes on what the Lord commanded them not to touch or eat. That location have been there. Abraham have seen that there was economic opportunities there, but he decided to stick to God's instructions. He remained in Canaan. Lot saw it as an opportunity to reach the location where Abraham have refused them from going together all this while. Now he was going to go alone. He will not mind asking counsel from the Lord, knowing fully well he has been the one who had stopped his uncle from going there. But that city will not last. All its beauty and glamour will be turned to ashes. Few years after Lot had settled, a very sad event took place. It was an event that should have made him have a rethink on the decision he took earlier. The 5 kingdoms of the plain had become vassal states of an alliance of 4 eastern kingdoms under the leadership of Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. They served this king for 12 years, but in the 13th year they rebelled. The following year Chedorlaomer's 4 armies returned, and at the battle of Siddim, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fell in defeat. Chedorlaomer despoiled the cities and took captives as he departed, including Lot, who dwelt in Sodom. When Abram heard what had happened to Lot, he led a force of 318 of his trained men and caught up to the armies of the 4 kings in Dan. Abram divided his forces and pursued them to Hobah. Abram brought back Lot and all of his people and their belongings. This was an opportunity for Lot to know that he needed to stay under the covering of Abraham. But no, Lot went back to Sodom. He had built a house and settled among them. He had even given his daughters out in marriage to the Sodomites. Peter, referring to him in 2 Peter 2 verse 8, said, "For that righteous man dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds." He was not comfortable, but again his wife may have played a role on his continuous stay in Sodom. He now had a house, a flourishing business, and even in-laws in the land. A part of him had been given to them. One day as Abraham was sitting in front of his tents, 3 men came to him. They were actually 2 angels and the Lord God himself. Abraham entertained them. And when they were about to leave, the Lord told Abraham that the cry of Sodom have reached to him and that he wants to confirm what he heard. This was his way of telling Abraham the danger coming to his nephew. Abraham pleaded with the Lord to spare the city for the sake of the righteous. God in mercy will have to bring out Lot for the sake of Abraham. In Genesis 19, we read, "And the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot saw them, and rose up to meet them, and he fell down on his face to the earth. And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn aside, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your way. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the broad place all night. And he urged them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread. And they did eat. After supper, that night before bedtime, the men of the city, young and old, gathered around Lot's house, demanding that he bring out his 2 guests, that they might know them carnally. Lot went out, closing the door behind him, and begged them to refrain from so wicked a deed, offering them instead his virgin daughters to do with as they pleased. The men of Sodom accused Lot of acting as a judge, and threatened to do worse to him than they would have done to the men. The angels drew Lot back into his house and struck the mob with blindness. The angels then said that God had sent them to destroy the place, telling Lot, Whomsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of the place. Lot went to the houses of his sons-in-law and warned them to leave the city, but they would not come, imagining that he spoke only in jest. Lot lingered in the morning, so the angels forced him and his family out of the city, telling them to flee for the hills, fearful that the hills would not afford them sufficient protection from the impending destruction. Lot instead asked the angels if he and his daughters hide in the safety of a neighboring village. An angel agreed, and the village was thenceforth known as Zor. When God rained fire and brimstone upon Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's wife looked back at the burning cities of the plain and was turned into a pillar of salt in recompense for her folly. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot came unto Zor. Then the Lord caused to rain upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked out toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the land went up as the smoke of a furnace in Zor, and so he and his 2 daughters resettled into the hills, living in a cave. The elder daughter, seeing that there were no men to marry, told the younger that they should instead sleep with their father to continue their lineage. To this end, They plied Lot with wine until he was too drunk to know what he was doing. The elder then lay with her father without his knowing. She then insisted that her sister do the same, which she duly did on the following day. From these incestuous unions, the older daughter conceived Moab, father of the Moabites, while the younger conceived Ben-Ammi, father of the Ammonites. Lot's life reveals how a single selfish decision can drive a man into ruin and waste.